ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, thank you very much for having us. We're really excited to be here. The history of this effort is a history of a certain amount of frustration. Because one thing that happens when you talk about India to people is they'll come back and say, oh yeah, wonderful culture. 5,000 years, very colorful, very complex, right? They talk about the future of India. Yes, it is going to be a great country one day. And then they come back and say, okay, listen, at the end of the day, it is a very difficult country to do business in. Right? So making money is difficult. And if you hear that enough, and if you've worked in an Indian environment, if you've worked with lots of companies, Amit and I did the Porter Prize together, we had an opportunity to talk to lots of companies, did lots of projects with companies, ran a company over here, you realize that there is a fundamental misconception. It is possible to do business in India, you just have to know how to. And there are enough companies that are able to generate value, drive value creation in the country in a very, very successful way. And that's what this book is all about. The second thing that the book is all about is, well, you may think that India is complex and is part of this Vuca world and very crazy. But let's be honest, what isn't? If we look at the world today, we have terrorism, we have floods and weather phenomena, we have Brexit, we have the election of Trump, things that create a significant amount of uncertainty, a significant amount of challenge in the way we do business, in the way we have to react to change and react so very quickly. So if anything, India is a very good training ground if you want to run a business globally. It really teaches you to be agile and on your feet and leverage opportunity wherever you find it. Now, how can you drive success in India or in a Vuca environment? It really is not that complicated. It's not rocket science. It is the consistent execution of 6 key levers. The first is operational excellence. Indians are, some say paisa vasool, value for money, very much focused on making sure that you don't pay too much for the value that you're getting. Very much understanding what is the value that I need in order to solve my problem. So clearly, if that is the case, you cannot afford to waste money. You have to be very focused on running operations extremely efficiently. The second is innovation. India is a market that is simply not China. The roads aren't that good. Electricity isn't for free. Money is not for free. So what you need in order to be successful is customer-centered innovation that gives you margins that can compensate for some of the difficulties and disadvantages that you have working in this environment. The third is choices and trade-offs. Rajiv Bajaj is a dear friend of mine. He simply says, listen, all of us think if we want to go out, will I go for a French chef or an Italian chef? Right? Our businessmen tend to think I can be French, Italian, continental, Indian, maybe mix in a little bit of Chinese. Successful companies in India focus. They know what they are and they know what the value is that they give to their customers, and we'll see a couple of examples later. Alignment. Making sure that everybody in your company understands what you are all about. So especially important in an environment like India. You simply cannot imagine all the challenges that your frontline people face when they're dealing with customers. They need to know the DNA of your company. They need to know what to do in critical situations aligned with your overall philosophy. Leadership and courage. We have exceptional business leaders in this country. Chan Sehgal, for example, who basically turned silver selling into a $7 billion enterprise, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. We have Bharat Forge, who bought a weapons factory in one weekend. Right? So there are clearly people that are outstanding businessmen that have the courage and the vision to drive success and performance. And last but not least, you have to be agile, and you sometimes simply have to get lucky. So those are the key success levers of successful Indian companies, but let me tell you, in a Vuca environment, this is not only valid for Indian companies, this is really valid for all of us. Let's just look at an operational excellence example, Maruti Suzuki. Maruti Suzuki is about one thing and one thing only, and that's a virtuous cycle. Cost down, volume up. I know how to do frugal innovation. I design components that satisfy my customers, but are still 10 to 15% cheaper than what my competition does. Brings the cost down. What does it do? It allows me to sell. If I can sell, I can invest in my dealers. More dealers means more volume. More volume means cost down for my suppliers. It also means that I have an opportunity using scale effects and modularization to launch niche models. Again, driving up volume, bringing down cost, and making sure that overall I have an unassailable position in the Indian market. How did they do it? How did they look at cost down? They focused on details. They have their 3M and various Japanese management techniques that they drove into their organization. That's definitely true. But they lead by example. Osamu Suzuki went through the factory here in NCR, opened the drawers, and said, listen, your drawer is messy. How can you be efficient if your drawer is messy? That is the kind of attention to detail that drives performance and drives a company that even today, after Volkswagen, Toyota, everybody is in the market, owns more than 50% of the market. Right? So operational excellence opens the door for you to really be successful in India. Second point, we talked about some of the challenges that we have regarding our environment. So innovation is critical. Again, lots of examples, but let's look at one of them, and that's Godrej. Godrej has a very simple philosophy. It's 3 by 3. I have 3 product categories in which I want to lead, and I have 3 regions where I want to be relevant as an emerging market multinational company. And that is Latin America, Africa, Asia. How do they do it? Well, some of it is simply I buy an asset in Argentina. I realize that they have hair color in a sachet, which is quite convenient. I take that innovation and I think, what can I do with it in India? Now, the challenge that I have to bring costs down by a factor of 5 to 10. But the good thing is, by using frugal innovation, frugal engineering, working closely with my suppliers, I actually can make that happen. And that allows me not to compete against an MNC, but it allows me to actually open up a completely new prestige segment. Upgrade my customers from hair powder to hair color in a cream. Same thing for the Fast Card. Fast Card was an innovation in Indonesia, brought it over here to India, drove down costs, changed the process, did a lot of innovation to make it happen, brought it down to 1 rupee per card. Created a 170 crore market. That is the kind of frugal innovation that is opening up opportunities for nimble companies and companies that are also willing to question the status quo. If you talk to the R&D head of Godrej, what he'll tell you is, listen, your MNCs have lost the basic understanding of chemistry. They just don't know what chemistry is all about. If you look at their development processes, they follow certain parameters, follow certain protocols that today are just not relevant anymore because the input parameters are better, input materials are better. I don't have to do it. Now, as a consequence, I can develop much faster, be first to market in a much more aggressive and agile manner, and as a consequence, be relevant and retain my relevance even with Hindustan Unilevers and others fighting for market share. So that's innovation. Choices and trade-offs. Bajaj. I talked about Rajiv already. Bajaj is a company that has one strong philosophy, and that is money before volume. No, I'm in business to make money. I'm not in business to have market share. The result of that is, yes, they are much lower in revenues than Hero, but their profit in absolute terms is higher. How did they get there? Well, they started with Hamara Bajaj. They started with scooters, came under attack by the Japanese. New technology entered the market, and they realized scooters alone are not going to make it happen for us. So let's try motorcycles. Now, in motorcycles, they were facing a dilemma. Hero basically owned the 100cc market, the commuting market in India. They tried to get into that market, but didn't really work. And that's when Rajiv decided, okay, listen, this doesn't make any sense. You have two options. You're either number one or you're different. So I'm not going to focus on 100, 110cc. I'm going to create motorcycles at 125cc, 150cc. So if Hero is getting you from A to B with a flat bench where you can put your wife and 2 children, or maybe also 3 or 4 children, and move the family from A to B, I'm going to say, forget about this. I'm about power. I'm about performance. I'll have a seat where maximum you have space for your girlfriend. Right? Completely different positioning that drove higher margins and drove success in the market. Beyond that, Bajaj clearly said globally, the important thing is the motorcycle market. So let me focus on the motorcycle market. Let me not go into scooters. Let me not dilute my attention. I'm not big enough. I'll get out of the scooter segment. I'll focus on motorcycles. I focus on high performance. I buy 49% in KTM, turn that organization around, and turn it into the largest performance motorcycle manufacturer globally. They just beat BMW, and that's one of the reasons why BMW was looking at TVS for a joint venture and tying up with them. Alignment, again important. I mean, my frustration at Mercedes-Benz was always, how do I get everybody aligned? Because if you're in a retail business, 30-40% of your frontline people typically have, that's the turnover of your frontline people. So training them, getting them aligned, getting them to do the right thing is a challenge. A good example of a company that has managed to get people aligned is Indigo. Indigo is about on-time performance and hassle-free travel. That's it. Now, how do you communicate on time in your organization? Well, one is the ground crew, one of the low members of your ground crew, is actually keeping tabs on your pilots. So if they arrive on time, you get a smiley face. If they don't arrive on time and leave on time, they get a sad face. But it's not limited to pilots. It actually then percolates down through the organization. If you have a training and you don't start on time, then the watchman is going to record that your training has a sad face. And that then obviously has an impact on your performance and your pay, right? If I want to be on time and hassle-free, I realize that my suppliers need to be paid on time just to make their life and our cooperation and collaboration hassle-free. So that's the kind of alliance that you look for. All of us have walked up and down the ramps of Indigo. Again, not an earth-shattering innovation, but a great idea making it feasible to basically load and unload planes quickly, making it also feasible to get handicapped people onto the plane without any problems and without the sort of precarious effort to try to carry them up. So alignment across all aspects, all processes of the organization. Next point, leadership. Motherson Sumi. Chand was about 19 years old when he was in college, and his grandfather decided, he was a jeweler, listen, this boy is up for no good, so instead of just letting him go to college, I'll give him some silver, right? The college was next to the airport. He's going to go, check the silver, send it off, get it through customs, bring the paperwork back to the banks. And for each kilo of silver, he'll get 1 rupee. Right? So he made about 1,000, 2,000 rupees in the 1970s, which at the time was a ton of money. At some point, the silver market went haywire, and suddenly he was making 1,000, 2,000 rupees a day. Right? So he found himself with a lot of money at a time when taxes in India were high, 90+%. So he decided, let me start a company. And started with wiring and wiring harnesses. Worked with Maruti, understood the opportunity of leveraging their quality practices, understood that Maruti under-promises, over-delivers, invested ahead of the OEM, and was able to build a very strong relationship with the OEM. Took another opportunity when Daimler was in trouble. Daimler in 1994 had not read the fine print when they were entering the country. In the fine print for their application to be able to produce in India, it was written that before you can sell in India, you have to export. It's a little hard to basically, first you want to sort of sell and generate scale and then export. What he did is, within 39 days, tied up with Vuca, a supplier of Daimler, flew 250 tons of equipment from Germany to India, built a factory. He didn't have time to pour concrete. He basically used 2 3/4 inch steel plates on the floor, put his machines on there, and was able to start exporting plastic components out of India, right? Agility, vision, and a clear understanding. I want my company to be about one thing and one thing only, and that's a solution provider for OEMs. Daimler came back when they said, okay, listen, Visiocorp has an issue. Why don't you take it over? At the time, Visiocorp was larger than Motherson. He took that company over, turned it around successfully, and then got another opportunity where OEMs came and said, listen, we have another problem. Can you help us? Please take over Peguform. And again, Peguform was an asset that was twice as large as he was, and that turned his company in a very short 30 years from zero, really literally zero, to a $7 billion company, and he wants to go to some $20 billion in the foreseeable future. Right? So that's leadership. That's seeing opportunity and leveraging opportunity. Bold decision making, another good example, Bharat Forge. Baba Kalyani and his team were sitting in London, and suddenly they realized that the gun manufacturing facility of RUAG is up for sale. So what they did is they flew to Switzerland, told RUAG, listen, stop the sale, because they were selling the factory via auction houses in pieces, flew back to London, told the auction houses, stop it, we'll buy all your packages, tell us the price. He bought 250 packages, flew them to Pune, and within 6 months was able to produce guns with the last and latest of technology, right? So clear leadership, understanding also of own capabilities. He had built up metallurgical competence in his company by investing in his people. He typically hires people from tier 2, tier 3 cities. They don't speak English, but they're good in mathematics and physics. Brings them on the line, finances bachelors for them together with Bits Pilani. If they do well, he pays for them to go and get a master's in metallurgy together with IIT Bombay. And if they continue to do well, he even pays for their PhD in nanomaterials or whatever is needed from his perspective and his company. That's the kind of commitment of building capability and then leveraging that capability in new businesses. So, riding the tiger, in contrast to public perception, or not public perception, but the perception of many people, especially in the West, being successful in India is absolutely feasible if you do it right. You also have to realize today's complexity, today's volatility is less the result of emerging markets, it's more the result of the Western world. If we look at Brexit, we look at what happened in Trump's election, that is creating much more uncertainty than the black versus white transition here in India, right? You need to excel across these 6 levers in order to succeed in Indian and global markets. It really is not rocket science, and focus and consistent execution is the key. There is really no alternative, right? And that's basically all that we had to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilfried. Thanks a lot. Yes. Sanjay, can I request you to come up stage and share your thoughts on what Wilfried has shared? Yes, it'll work.
It'll work when I go there?
Yes.